has one is the circle. A figure eight is better, or just a pan Bally, but if you have a circle effect, you hit that, it's huge. But you don't have to be huge. You can take it down so it's only going about 10% of where it has to go. Notice I have everything moving in a circle. It looks kind of cool, but you might only want to use that once a show. Instead, you would offset everything to make it look like a random ballyhoo like this. Now, I normally have a slow and a fast ballyhoo, because if it's a ballad and they break into something, you would like to go on a slow movement. So I'm going to record this first into one cue, but at the same time, I am now going to make it a little bigger in size and speed it up, so if there's a fast song, besides having a slow ballyhoo on the stage and a fast ballyhoo, sometimes you just like to have an audience ballyhoo. What I normally do is keep the wash lights on the band, but I take just the hard edge lights and the floor lights and I bally them around the audience. That way everybody on stage is in a stationary position, but the lights are still moving around the audience, lighting everybody, basically creating something we call hoopla, which is audience participation in a ballyhoo. And we've done that simply here by just taking the hard edge lights only to go out there while still maintaining a light on everybody else. To go backwards a second, I like to fill every fader I can. And I'll look back here at my intensity faders and notice that, hey, I still have a couple things empty. All right, what would I do? Well, one of the most important things I do is I take every light off and do an odd even step. Basically, if I turn on my whole system here, and I'll put in some normal straight focus, then I will select the odds and turn them off in the first cue, so only half the lights are on, and I record that into a fader. Then I turn the odds back on at full. I'll select all the even numbers at 0. And that way I record that on top, so there's 2 cues in this stack. Mind you, once I have 2 cues in the stack, I need to tell them both to be 0 time. That way as I bump through this, you will see that a big change is going on there. And you can go in time with the band's music and keep stepping this and bump, 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 everything on, and bump, 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 wow, bump, 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 bump. Basically just called an on-even. And once again, take the options and make sure that it goes when off 0. So as soon as you bring this fader up, it goes. Same thing with the flash button. You would like to press the flash button and have it just keep going odds and evens every time you press. The other thing is I will take and write another chase that goes between the wash and the hard lights. So if I take the front beams at full, but I take the rear beams at 0 and the floor beams and the spots at full, I'm going to record that into the first cue on this empty fader here. And then I'll take the spots, turn them off, take the floor beams off, but keep the rear beams and the front beams at full. I'm going to record that as the second step on this. So now when I hit this, I've just got half the lights coming on, half the lights coming off, as you can see. But as you'll notice, there's 2-second time on it. So once again, I'm going to take these because I don't want 2 seconds time. I just want to go bam, 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 bam. And it works. Mind you, all the front lights are on the band all the time, and the other lights are in another focus, but I will turn half of them on, half of them off, back and forth. So instead of odd evens, I'm going between the hard edge and the wash lights on intensity. So the odd even would look something like this. going back and forth, but the steps look more symmetrical like this, going on and off. That way I've got options. Now I've got 8 different things in intensity I can bring up on this, and I'm pretty much done with this. Over here, once again, where I've got the focuses and stuff, the one thing I haven't paid any attention to are strobes. Just about every good show, especially if there's fast music, has a bit of a strobe. In this case, I've got a few atomics that I can turn on. Turning on the strobes, I generally try and keep them going fast by taking the rate up almost to full, like this. The visualizer can't see, but there's some atomic strobes. I'm going to put them by a fader by themselves over here. Anytime you use any kind of strobe, a data flash, an AF1000, an atomic strobe, it's very important to make the time 0 on all those, because besides just intensity, the rate of the strobe will go. And if the rate is taking 2 seconds to go from slow to fast, the strobe starts slow and you don't get the desired effect. A strobe hit is meant to go wham as fast as you can go, because most likely you're going to turn it off soon. Again, I take the options to 0 and I go whenever I'm hitting the flash button, and I want to release whenever I lift up that flash button. Bam, bam. Strobes are periodic cues. The other thing everybody likes to do is the random strobe that comes. High-end has great random strobes with their lights. When you're in color, strobes are not as effective as when you're not. So what I like to do is grab all my fixtures that I have at full and put the Grandmaster up, helps, and then I go into my strobe mode. If I hit this, I should have a random strobe here. Of course, the visualizer doesn't really show it, but I will take all those and turn them to white at the same time while they're strobing in different channels. Then I'm going to record that in my last empty fader on this console. The only difference is on this one, besides making it 0 time, is I'm going to make it a crossfade option again. That means, again, as long as I lift up this fader, it'll work, but the minute I bring the fader down, it stops. And there we go. So that means if I'm in a basic look like this, and I bring up the strobe fader or I press go, everything starts strobing that you see. I let it go, and it stops. Of course, the visualizer can't keep up with the speed of the console, but it's showing you basically what's happening. And it's a quick move. So I have my regular strobes that are up there, or I have my moving lights all strobing when I do that. And I just got to label those really quickly. And I'll call one random. And the other one I'm just going to call strobes. Okay, the only thing we have missing from all this is my last 10 faders. This is where I'd like to put colors or color combinations. I can have my lights on here and record the color combinations into these last faders, but nothing but the color will go into those faders, because everything else is not locked in channel, but actually locked in a fader. So right now, one of my faders that has pan and tilt intensity is up. And the first thing I do on the end is I always make fader 1 no color, so that no matter where I am, I can bump white when I need to. So I bring my palettes up. I'm just going to grab all my lights here and go to my color palette that says open white. There you go. I record that down here in the first one. Now, no matter what I hit, that's open white. Now, you'll see up here everything's in white. You have a pretty scene, but it doesn't look like much because everything is in white. So the first thing I'm going to do is I grab all lights, and in my last wing here, I'm going to tell them to go to certain colors. I always leave the color white on the end fader so that no matter what, I can grab it and make it go white. In this particular page, I am bumping everything in no time, because I simply, if I have the choice of a show and I know it's only a half-hour quick musical act, I'd rather have no time to get dramatic events in change of color than I would a 2-second fade. If I had another wing with a bunch of buttons on it, perhaps I could have colors at fade time and colors that don't, but for all intents and purposes, this is better. At the same time as white, I like to go back and make one that's color in Congo, blue, a dark blue. Now, dark blue is a good color to go to in between bands or at the end of a song. Congo blue is the only thing that I put time on. For some reason, I find I like to put 4 seconds, because anytime you're going to Congo blue, it means the tune is slowing down, or the song is slowing down and going to the opposite of a crescendo. So therefore, I can hit this button and have it go slowly and fade to Congo, but if I want it to snap to white, bam. Now the other things I like to do now is do color combinations that are the same, but with the difference between the hard edge and the wash light. For instance, I will take all the beams and I will go to a darker color than the hard edge. For instance, I'd make all them red, and then I'll take the hard edge lights and make them yellow. And that looks sexy right there. So I'm going to record that as a first cue on this fader. But then as a change, I'm going to reverse them. I'll take the spots and make them red, and I'll take the beams and I'll make them yellow or amber. Making all the wash lights yellow is usually really harsh and too bright, so I'd prefer to make them amber here. I record that on top of the last cue, and I'm going back here and I'm going to make both of these cues 0 time. That way, every time I hit this button, I'm going bam, 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 like that. Red and yellow always work together. They're fine. There's other colors that do the same thing. Another important color, actually one more rule I like to do is I like to make the front light a lighter color than the back light. So if I have everything in red here, I would tend to take the front lights and make them a brighter color. So I'm going to take the front beam and I'm going to go to, say, amber in this color, in this particular cue, because now I can see the men standing out and they don't go dark, especially on video. They'll be backlit like that, but I'm going to record that into that cue here and record Q1 enter and merge it in there. Other colors that go together perfectly are green and blue. So what I would take is I'm going to take all the lights first, and I'm just going to take them to color blue. I'm going to take the front lights, and I'm just going to make them a little brighter by rolling some magenta out so that they're almost a pale blue color now as compared to a blue. But then I'm going to take the floor beams and the spots, and I'm going to go and make them green. So now we have a kind of a 3-color thing, but it's blue and green. I'm going to record that into the next fader here, and then reverse them. So if I take the floor beams and the spots to blue, and I take the rear beams to green, I get a dramatic effect. Once again, I will take these color bumps and make them 0 time. And bam, 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 bam. And you can see the difference in the focuses. So as I'm bumping these, I might be going like this and moving them while bumping color. So the lights are still moving in 2 seconds, but the colors are bumping. Same thing with a bally. If I want the lights to be ballyhooing around the stage, but I still want them to be bumping color, you can get that. Besides red and yellow, the last great thing is for slow ballads, is you like to take everything to Congo. Let me bring up some look here. We go to Congo, and if you take just the hard edge lights, and we take them and we put them in, say, red, that's sex in a minute. Record that into here, and now no matter what, if I have to go to something mellow, I hit that, and I'll just fade to something sexy. Because the next minute I'm going to want to bump up when the music gets hotter to a red-yellow bump, and then go down to a Congo red bump. Something like that. That's pretty easy. Now the other thing we haven't talked about is gobos. At times, excuse me for a second, I'm going to bring these spots up by themselves. You want to take the spots and find a gobo pattern that's very nice. So you pull something like that out. The Shattered program. But before I even start making cues for gobos, the most important thing is finding a way out of the gobo. So what I always do, the opposite of the white, is I make all the gobos open out of there, and I record that in one fader just by itself. That way, no matter what, I can bump that gobo out and not get lost doing it. And call that one open gobo. Then I'll take another stack next to that, and I